Hey guys, it's Chaos Chrono back with another AOA display opening. We're on to display number 11, second last display in this case. So let's see what we got today. Hope you guys have been enjoying the content so far, and all these videos are enlightening you in terms of what AOA has to offer. I was hoping for one of those epic decks to pop up, but unfortunately not yet. We'll see between this one and the next one if there's anything good that comes from it. As usual, I'll plug my team podcast, Team ESP. Feel free to find us on Spotify and YouTube. Feel free to drop any suggestions there for content ideas as well. Now moving on to our first deck, we have Elder Xerxes. It's a Brobnar, Diz, and Shadows deck. For Amber Generation, we're starting with 12 pips of Amber. We have Foozle, Misery Exploit, Soul Snatcher, Tolus, 2 copies of Furtive Investors, Gamgee, Sucker Punch that repeats, Swindle, 2 Yangtze Gangs, and the Dusk Runner for additional support, for a total of about 22 or more in Amber Generation. For Amber Control, we have Pandemonium, Gamgee, Swindle, 2 copies of the Yangtze Gang, Dusk Runner, and Skeleton Key, with Key Control in Lash of Broken Dreams and Silver Key Imp. Overall Amber Control, I'm going to rate about a 6. There is no artifact control in this deck. For Creature Control, we're looking at 1-2 Punch, Bramo, First Blood, Pain Reaction, 2 copies of Sucker Punch, and supporting cards like 2 copies of Into the Fray and Orb of Invidious, giving me a total creature control of about 5. For speed, we have Yurk, Old Yurk, and Dust Chronicles, giving us a solid 3. And there's some support in Grumpus Tamer set, as well as Disruption with the 2 copies of Binding Irons. Overall, this deck has good Amber Generation. The Might Makes Right with 32 Brobnar power makes it likely that it can hit, but ideally we would have wanted to see another Lollip in here or something just to make it more consistent. However, all the other categories aside from Amber Generation, this deck is a little lacking. We have Pandemonium with only 14 creatures, not to mention there are smaller creatures, so it's less likely that Pandemonium will be as effective. And we don't have a board wipe to catch up in case the opponent takes the board. The interesting parts of this deck that really changes the game for Keyforge is Soul Snatcher and Tolus. Depending on how well you or your opponent can utilize it, that can really swing the game. The summary of this deck is that it's got strong Amber Generation, but is weaker in all the other categories. For the 2 cards, Soul Snatcher and Tolus are difficult to play around with the limited tools in this deck, and the opponent could capitalize on the effects of those 2 cards. So with that in mind, I'm going to rate this deck at about a 52. Second deck is Zendaya Tactics Rayheziu. It's a Brobnar, Mars, and Untamed deck. For Amber Generation, we're looking at 11 pips of Amber to start. Supporting cards include Take That Smarty Pants for its effect, though inconsistent. Mars Needs Amber for its effect, Hypnotic Command, and Full Moon, giving me a total of about 16 or more potentially for Amber Generation. For Amber Control, we have Take That Smarty Pants, Mars Needs Amber, and Hypnotic Command, giving me a total of 2.5. For Artifact Control, we have Destroy Them All, giving me a solid 1. For Creature Control, we have Bramo, 2 copies of First Blood, the Phoenix Heart, Destroy Them All, Save the Pack with 2 copies of They're Everywhere, and Piranha Monkeys, with supporting cards like 2 Groggins, 4 Lollips, 2 Agent Humans, Zorg, Pimpaga Jaga, and Earthbind, giving me a total of about 14 or more for Creature Control. For speed, there's nothing that really interacts with that, so it'll be a 0. However, we do have supporting cards like Drummerknot, 2 copies of Mars First, 3 copies of Vesma Think Drone, Glimmer, Regrowth, and Song of Spring. Overall, for highlights, it's got good creature control. This is the biggest selling point for this deck. The big Brobnar board with First Blood, given there's 8 creatures, 8 big ones. So aside from a wipe, they do have staying power. We have Vesma Think Drone with Bramo, Glimmer, and Piranha Monkeys to make use of their play effects. We have Save the Pack with 2 copies of They're Everywhere, and the Pimpaga Jaga that gives all our big Brobnar Skirmish. So those are all great highlights for this deck. However, everything else about this deck is very lacking. The Amber Control, Generation, and Speed are all really low. So this deck is definitely playing the long game. And since it's depending on holding the board through having a board, rather than through wipes or any other removal options, this can be limiting for this deck. Overall, I'm going to rate this deck at about a 53. For deck number 3, we have Khaodot, Styqh-Tioj, Strategist. Some of these decks really have names I don't know how to pronounce. It's a Dis, Mars, and Untamed deck. For Amber Generation, we're looking at 11 pips of Amber to start. We have Dust Imp, Tentacus, Soul Snatcher again, Mars needs Amber and Mimicry as supporting cards, giving me a total of about 16 or more for Amber generation. For Amber control, we have Mars needs Amber and Bronze Key to control key production. So all in all, Amber control is really just going to be a 1. For artifact control, we have Tentacus giving us a 0.5. For creature control, we have 2 copies of Call the Weak, Tixel Beambuckler, Sample Collection, and supporting cards like 2 copies of Amber Imp, the Amber Conduction Unit, Zorg, Plague Master, 2 copies of Persistence Hunting, Ink of the Spider, and 2 copies of Roxador, giving me a total creature control of about 6. For speed, we have Martian Generosity, so I'll just rate it out of 2 just for that card. We have supporting cards like Exhume, Not Finished With You, and 2 copies of Proliferator, and Disruption with the Tasmal. So overall, the highlights of this deck, we have Martian Generosity. This kind of set up an Untamed Key Charge turn, which is kind of nice. The Soul Snatcher with a lot of creatures and some must-answer type of creatures like the Tasmal are nice to help us generate. Unfortunately, we have the Plague Master with the Soul Snatcher, which would work really well if we had the humans to get destroyed, and the opponents didn't. We have Martian Generosity without a Key Abduction, and we're lacking some Amber Generation to make full use of that Martian Generosity, unless we have it board. With 20 creatures, we don't have many actions, big generators, so we're going to have to try to develop a board, maintain it, and generate Amber through it. So that Martian Generosity may not be the most effective. Overall, this is a mismatched set of combo pieces that doesn't really thrive, but can have opportune moments to shine, and I'll rate it out of 52. For deck number 4, we have Battleforged Cadmus of the Strand. It's a Disc, Mars, and Sanctum deck. For Amber Generation, we're looking at 8 pips of Amber, with Dust Imp, Misery Exploit, Tentacus, 2 copies of Harvester, and Anahita the Trader to bring it up to about a 15 for Amber Generation. For Amber Control, we have Charette, Tentacus, Albeit the Grim, 2 copies of Born the Redeemed, and Anahita the Trader, as well as Nizek Resonator, and 2 copies of Proclamation 346E for Key Control. Overall, I'm going to rate Amber Control at about an 8. For Artifact Control, we do have Poltergeist, giving us a 1.5. For Creature Control, we have Banish, 2 copies of Mother Gun, 2 copies of Tixel Beambuckler, Exterminate, Destructive Analysis, and the Spirit's Way for direct removal. For supporting cards, we have Mindworm, Zorg, and Golden Aura, giving me a total creature control of about 10. For speed, we just have Old Yerk, but we do have 3 copies of Exhume that helps make things more efficient, so I'll rate the speed at about a 2. For highlights, overall there's good board control and decent Amber generation and control. Anahita the Trader with 4 artifacts means there's going to be tools for them to use. The Poltergeist and Tentacus are nice in combination to deny the use of those artifacts. The Zorg pairs well with Exterminate, so we can destroy a creature that's 7 power or less. As for the bad, the Wipe is bad for our own side, so that being Spirit's Way, 3+ power creatures, which a big majority of our creatures falls under. So for a tighter game, that might not be a usable board wipe. For Amber Control, it's in its weakest form with capture based and cost control based Amber Control. As for the interesting bits, the 3 copies of Exhume does provide a lot of flexibility. However, if you get a full hand of Exhume early on, that's kind of unfortunate. There's the Charette, 2 copies of Tixel, Albeit, and Nizek that work well with the Exhume, either for play effects or permanent board effects. There are 20 creatures overall, so it is a bit more board heavy, and the 2 Proclamations are definitely a highlight. Overall, it's a slower toolkit deck that has a lot of fun interhouse combos with the Exhumes, and I'll rate this deck at about a 63. For deck number 5, we have Restuleg, Hodak, the Wimpy and Hollow. It's a Brobnar Distant Shadows deck. For Amber Generation, we're starting with 7 pips of Amber. We have Smith's Effect, Nerf Blast, Swindle, Yank the Gang, Brand the Fanatic, Little Nif, and TMTP, or Too Much to Protect, to bring it up to about a 16 for Amber Generation. For Amber Control, we have Charette, Nerf Blast, Swindle, Yank the Gang, Brand the Fanatic, Little Nif, and Too Much to Protect, with Key Control in Lash of Broken Dreams and Miasma, bringing me a total of 8 for Amber Control. There is no artifact control once again. For creature control, we have 2 copies of 1-2 Punch, 3 copies of Unlock Gateway, Color of Subordination, Nerve Blast, Sucker Punch, and supporting cards like Relentless Assault, giving me a total creature control of about 10 or more. For speed, we have Yerk and Hidden Stash, giving me a total of 2, and again, Grumpus Tamer set for support. For disruption, we do have Little Rapskull and 2 copies of Binding Irons along with the Streak. For highlights, this deck does have the Gangernaut combo, which is always very fun. We have hard amber control in the form of too much to protect, and there's plenty of board control and wipes. With that being said, 3 copies of Unlock Gateway just hurts to see. They're Omegas, they give initiative to your opponent to start the game. It's, in terms of the board, restarting the board with the opponent going first. We are also missing artifact control. We have Brand without any way to destroy it in-house, and we have 2 bad pennies without a good use for them. Overall, it's a mixed bag of fun combos, but also some useless cards like the bad pennies. The strong board control gives it more potential in an AOA setting, so I'll rate this deck at about a 60. For deck number 6, we have Suntance, the Tutor of Chameleons. It's a Broadnar Logos and Shadows deck. For Amber Generation, starting with 12 pips of Amber, with supporting cards like Binate Rupture and Nerve Blast, Sucker Punch that repeats, and 2 copies of Routine Job, giving me a total of about 18 for Amber Generation. For Amber Control, we have Broke, Burn the Stockpile, Nerve Blast, Skeleton Key, and the 2 copies of Routine Job, with Key Cost Control with Miasma. So overall Amber Control, I'm gonna rate about a 7. There is no artifact control. For creature control, we have 1-2 Punch, Bramble, Coward's End, Standardized Testing, Nerve Blast, Sucker Punch, and Lethal Distraction for direct removal. Supporting cards include Into the Fray, Tremor, and Relentless Assault, giving me a total of about 7 for creature control. For speed, we have Sound the Hordes, 2 copies of Helper Bot, Thespian, 2 copies of Wild Wormhole, and for support, we have Signal Fire and Archimedes, giving me a total speed about 7. For highlights, the Helper Bots with clutch cards like Nightforge and other houses are a great combination and provide a lot of versatility for the deck and flexibility. However, the Sound the Horns comes with only 4 Broadnar creatures. We have Binate Rupture without interdimensional graft, so that becomes a more situational card. The wipe is anti-synergistic with the deck's creatures, so standardized testing, we do have larger creatures with the Brobnar and smaller creatures in both the Shadows and Logos. There is only 13 creatures in this deck, so it will perform more akin to a race deck. A little bit more board control would have been nice. Overall, it's a well-rounded deck that's only missing artifact control. Combos are a little lacking due to the anti-synergies, and I'll rate this deck at about a 62. For deck number 7, we have Kent, Mithga's Corpulent Scofflaw. It's a Dis Logos and Sanctum deck. For Amber Generation, we're looking at 7 pips of Amber to start, and supporting cards like Schuler, Got That Research, Knowledge is Power, and Free Markets to bring it up to about a 12 for Amber Generation. For Amber Control, we have Charette, Schuler, Cut That Research, Born in the Redeemed, Take Hostages, and Baron Mangevin, along with Key Control with Gold Key Imp and Proclamation 346E, giving me a total of about 7 for Amber Control. For Artifact Control, we once again have the Poltergeist, beautiful. For Creature Control, we have Call the Weak, Unlock Gateway, Standardized Testing, Smite, Harder They Come, and the Spirit's Way for direct removal. Supporting cards include Blinding Light and Golden Aura, giving me a total creature control of about a 7. For speed, we have Library of the Damned, Library of Babel, Titan Librarians, UIX Researcher, Sloppy Lab Work, and Knowledge is Power, along with Curator for support, and 2 copies of Seismo Entangler for disruption. So overall speed, I'm going to rate about a 6. For highlights, this deck has good board control. We have Proclamation with Cutthroat Research. We have Curator with 4 artifacts in-house, so there's a good chance they're going to come in ready on the turn that Curator comes down. However, we're a bit lacking in the Amber Generation, Amber Control front. This deck has 16 creatures, so this deck is kind of fencing between a race and control style of play. Overall, I'm going to rate this deck at a 58. For deck number 8, we have Emperor O Godeater. It's a Brobnar, Sanctum, and Shadows deck. For Amber Generation, we have 11 pips of Amber, and supporting cards like Foozle, Furtive Investors, Gamgee, Nerf Blast, and 2 copies of Ronnie, 3 Sucker Punch, That Repeats, and Yangtze Gang, giving me a total of about 18 for Amber Generation. For Amber Control, we have Forge Master Og, Take Hostages, Doorstep to Heaven, Gatekeeper, Gamgee, Nerf Blast, 2 copies of Ronnie, Yangtze Gang, and Skeleton Key, with Key Control in Grunt Buggy and Miasma. So I'll estimate that about a 10 or more. There is no artifact control once again. For creature control, we do have 1-2 Punch, Coward's End, Gargantua Scrapper, 2 copies of Smite, Mighty Lance, Nerf Blast, and 3 copies of Sucker Punch, with supporting cards like Into the Fray and Shield of Justice, giving me a total of about 9. For speed, we have Shadow's Ambassador and Doom of the Martyr, giving me a total of about 2. and with supporting cards like the 2 Juggernaut. So to highlight, this deck has good Ember control, with both the Doorstep and Gatekeeper for a hard Ember control. We have a combo with Miasma, the Doorstep, and double Ronnie. On the fence, we have the Grunt Buggy with 6 creatures that are 5 power or higher. However, without artifact control and the ability to remove the Grunt Buggy at will, any games where you're not sure whether it's going to be helpful or harmful, you might not be able to play that card. We also have 2 Drummernauts that don't have good targets for play effects within the Brobnar house. None of the giants really serve that purpose, so at best they can be used to heal some of the creatures. We have 3 copies of Sucker Punch, so that's triple alphas in one house, and you know how I feel about that. Overall, this deck has potential given its generation control numbers. Some combos do fall short due to the constitution of this deck though. Overall, I'm going to rate this deck out of 64. For deck number 9, we have Ximan, Plateaus, Doomsayer. It's a Brobnar, Shadows, and Untamed deck. For Amber generation, we have 8 pips of Amber, and Gamgee, Ronnie, Swindle, 2 Darnas, and Full Moon to bring it up to about 16 or more for Amber generation. For Amber control, we have Broke, Gamgee, Ronnie, Swindle, and Lifeweb, giving me a total of about 5. For artifact control, we have Barehanded, and only 1 friendly artifact, which is nice, giving me a total of 0.5 for artifact control. For creature control, we have First Blood, Pound, Flaming Shaman, and 5 copies of Plague Rats for direct removal, and supporting cards like Tremor, Persistent Scenting, and Pimpaga Anga, giving me a total of about 8 for creature control. For speed, we have Summon the Horns and Dust Chronicles, giving me a 2, and supporting cards like 2 Dust Witch and a Glimmer. Overall, not much to say about this deck in terms of the good. The numbers are all either average or a bit lower than what we hope. For the bad, we do have Drummernaut without a target again, so that's always unfortunate to see. With this being a Plague Rat deck, typically I've seen Plague Rat decks not do as well. The one saving grace of a Plague Rat in this deck is the Darnas. There's a lot of friendly damage that can be applied with the Plague Rat, and the Darna can come in to do a massive Ember generation play off that damage. This deck does have 24 creatures, so that just makes the Plague Rats potentially more hazardous to yourself than your opponent, since you are relying on your board sticking around. All in all, I'm going to rate this deck out of 55. For deck number 10, we have Duchess I Larunpinky. It's a Mars, Sanctum, and Shadows deck. For Amber generation, we have 10 pips of Amber to start, with supporting cards like Mars Needs Amber, Mind Warper, Free Markets, and Heat of the Trader, 3 copies of Furtive Investors, Gamgee, Ronnie, Swindle, and Yancy Gang, giving me a total about 20 or more for Amber generation. For Amber control, we have Maruk the Marked, Gatekeeper, and Heat of the Trader, Gamgee, Ronnie, Swindle, and Yancy Gang, along with Nizic Resonator for key control, giving me a total of about 8. For artifact control, we have Destroy Them All, giving me a 1. For creature control, we have Hypno Beam, Sample Collection, Extinction, 2 copies of Sucker Punch for direct removal, and supporting cards like Golden Aura, Shield of Justice, and Radiant Truth, giving me a total of about 6. For speed, we have a Shadows Ambassador for a 1 value. For highlights, we have good spec numbers overall for each category, at least in Ember generation and control. However, the creature control is a bit lacking and has no wipe. There's also 3 copies of Furtive Investors, which isn't necessarily a bad thing in and of itself, but it does take away potential performance value if those slots were actually filled with other cards. A double Sucker Punch, again, double alpha, not my cup of tea. Having both in hand at the same time is just an unfortunate thing to experience, as it effectively performs like a chain. Overall, it's an average toolkit deck that's a little lacking in board control, so overall I'm going to rate this deck at a 62. For deck number 11, we have Ozar-Toti B Nixgland the second. It's a Brobnar Mars and Untamed deck. For Amber generation, we have 9 pips of Amber to start, and supporting cards like Blood Money, 2 copies of Mars Needs Amber, 2 copies of Amber Spy Mongrel, and Flaxia, for a total of about 16 for Amber generation. For Amber control, we have 2 copies of Mars Needs Amber and Gromid, giving me a total of 2. There is once again no artifact control. For creature control, we have Brammo, Pound, 2 copies of Guarantee Scrapper, Champion's Challenge, Carpet Flotsam, Tixel Beam Buckler, and Exterminate, with supporting cards like Tremor, Relentless Assault, Mind Worm, Red Planet Raygun, and Persistence Hunting, giving me a total of about 10 for creature control. For speed, once again, there's nothing that directly affects draw, play, or archive, so that'll be a 0. However, we do have Combat Pheromones, 2 copies of Dust Witch, Glimmer, Song of Spring, Nepenthe Seed, and Gravicycle to kind of make the deck more efficient. For highlights, we do have the Gangernaut combo and a Brammo to go with the Drummernaut as well. We have Lollip with Champions Challenge. We have Carpet Flotsam and Pound for the Mars Needs Amber plays. And we have Vesma Think Drone to archive Reflaxia for repeated use. As for the bad, we have 2 Gargantus Trappers, so once again a double alpha. We have Gromid, which prevents us from playing creatures on our own end, so that's definitely a risky play. We're lacking Amber Control despite the slow speed of the deck, and we have no Artifact Control. So overall, it's a deck that has some fun combos, but a lot that's lacking and a couple of bad cards in the deck. Primarily Gargantus Scrapper and Gromid. So overall, I'm going to rate this deck out of 52. Moving on to our final deck, we have Jyxhea, the Conqueror of Diremanse. It's a Mars, Shadows, and Untamed deck for Amber generation with 10 pips of Amber to start, and supporting cards like 3 Foozles, Mars Needs Amber, Swindle, Throwing Stars, Umbra, and 2 copies of Yang to Gang, giving me a total of about 20 for Amber generation. For Amber control, we have Screech Bomb, Mars Needs Amber, Shadow Storm, Swindle, Umbra, 2 copies of Yang to Gang, and Skeleton Key, as well as Grunt Buggy and Miasma for key control, giving me a total of about 9 for Amber control. For Artifact control, we do have Snake Lifter, so I'll rate that at 0.5. Creature control, we do have 1-2 Punch, Bramo, Pound, Mother Gun, Tixel Beam Buckler, Sample Collection, Lights Out, and Special Delivery, as well as supporting cards like Into the Fray and Red Planet Raygun for a total of 8. For speed, we have Perplexing Sophistry, and supporting cards like Proliferator and Combat Pheromones, and Disruption with Little Rapsco and 3 copies of Shockworm, giving me a total of 1 for speed. Overall, the specs are pretty good for this deck in terms of Amber generation, control, and creature control. We do have 6 creatures for the Grunt Buggy, so that's again kind of on the fence. However, we do have 3 copies of Shockworm that doesn't give any extra value by having multiple copies other than being consistently able to stun the first creature that reaps on your opponent's side. We have Shadow Storm, which I personally don't like as a card. It is useful in certain situations, and obviously if you're playing against a super rush deck, there is that opportunity to cancel out your own Amber for triple the loss. Otherwise, it's a bit finicky to use, and obviously it does hurt yourself to a degree as well. Overall, the specs are good as a toolkit deck, just lacking the artifact control other than Snake Lifter, so there's no way to remove a really harmful permanent effect, but you can take control of useful artifacts. A better version of hard Amber control would have been preferred than the Shadow Storm. Overall, it does have the tools. I'll be rating this deck at a 63. That wraps up our 11th display. Hope you guys found this video and this series helpful in some way, entertaining to some degree. Maybe scratch that itch for opening decks, and maybe not feel as bad if you end up pulling a bad deck yourself. Age of Ascension has been rough, and this display is no different. There have been a few highlight decks in the past 10 displays, and we have 1 display left in this case to really see what a full case has to offer. So I'll have 1 more video for sure. Now, I do have a lot more cases, well, not a lot more cases, but a lot more displays of AOA left to open. I am thinking about doing a stream for that purpose, so if that's something you guys would be interested in, do let me know in the comment section below. And stay tuned for any news on the Keyforge group, as I'll be posting there once I determine what day I'll be streaming. It's gonna crack open a bunch of decks, so feel free to drop by. With that all being said, thank you guys for watching. If you liked the video, go ahead and hit that like button and consider subscribing to the channel. And with that, I'll see you guys in the next video or on stream. As always, be kind and happy forging.